The overwhelming odds. The Caltharian armada arrives. The void of space trembled as 10,000 ships materialized at the edge of the Sol system. Each vessel gleamed with the dark purple hulls of the Caltharian Empire, their weapon arrays bristling like the spines of some cosmic predator. At the heart of this massive armada, aboard the flagship Domination's Edge, Admiral Vextar surveyed his prize through the observation deck's crystalline windows. Earth hung before them like a blue jewel. Unaware of the doom approaching from the outer darkness, Vextar's 6 arms moved gracefully as he adjusted the tactical displays, his compound eyes reflecting the satisfaction of another inevitable victory. The Caltharian Empire had conquered 50 star systems in the past century, and not once had they encountered meaningful resistance. Numbers always decided the outcome, and numbers were something the Empire possessed in abundance. "Status report," Vextar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. His second-in-command, Commander Zixala, approached with military precision. "Admiral, our scouts have completed their reconnaissance. The humans possess approximately 200 combat vessels. Their technology appears to be based on primitive fusion drives and kinetic weapons. Intelligence suggests their largest ship mass is less than half of our smallest destroyer." Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. 200 ships against 10,000. The mathematics were so absurd they bordered on comedy. The humans would surrender within minutes of seeing his armada, just as every other species had done. It was almost disappointing how predictable these conquests had become. "Very well. Initiate standard conquest protocols. Broadcast surrender terms on all frequencies. Give them 1 rotation to comply before we demonstrate our superiority." As the message was transmitted across space, Vextar reflected on the intelligence reports about humanity. They were a young species, barely 3 centuries into space exploration. Their worlds were rich in resources but poorly defended. They had never faced a true galactic power before. This would be educational for them, albeit brief. Captain Maya Chen's last stand on the other side of the system. Captain Maya Chen stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Coalition flagship Indomitable Spirit. The emergency lights bathed everything in red, casting dramatic shadows across the faces of her crew. At 35, Maya was young for a fleet captain, but the urgency of Earth's situation had accelerated many careers. Her dark eyes studied the sensor readings with an intensity that made her officers nervous. 10,000 confirmed contacts, reported Lieutenant Commander James Park from the tactical station. Mass readings indicate Dreadnought-class vessels at minimum. They're broadcasting surrender demands in perfect English. Maya's jaw tightened. The Caltharians had been studying humanity longer than anyone had realized. She turned to her communications officer, Sarah Walsh. "Put their message on the main screen." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Vextar in all his alien majesty. His translated words carried the weight of imperial authority. "Humans of the Sol system, you now face the might of the Caltharian Empire. Your resistance is futile. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted the privilege of serving the Empire. Refuse and face annihilation. You have 1 rotation to decide." Silence filled the command center as the message ended. Everyone looked to Maya, waiting for the decision that would determine humanity's future. She stood quietly for a long moment, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. I know what you're thinking. 10,000 against 200. Impossible odds. But I want you to remember something. They chose to come here. They traveled across the galaxy to threaten our families, our children, our home. That tells me they're afraid of what we might become." Her voice grew stronger, carrying across space to every human ship. "They've conquered 50 star systems, but they've never faced humans before. They don't know what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall. They've never seen what happens when you threaten everything we love." Maya paused, then delivered the words that would echo through galactic history. "Today we teach the galaxy that humanity doesn't surrender. Today we show them what it means to fight like gods. All ships initiate Protocol Omega. It's time to dance." The hidden preparation. What the Caltharians didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored banks of quantum computers that hummed with barely contained energy. The Consciousness Interface Project had been humanity's most classified secret, a technology that linked human minds directly to ship systems through quantum entanglement. "Maya, the network is online. Elena's voice crackled through the encrypted communication channel. All 200 ships are connected. The collective tactical intelligence is functioning perfectly. Maya felt the connection activate, her consciousness suddenly expanding beyond her own ship. She could perceive through the sensors of every human vessel simultaneously. Think with the combined processing power of 200 crews. It was overwhelming and exhilarating, like becoming a god of war. Sarah, open a channel to the Caltharian flagship, Maya ordered. When the connection was established, she looked directly into Admiral Vextar's compound eyes. This is Captain Maya Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition. We respectfully decline your generous offer. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it. Vexitar's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. Foolish creatures. You choose extinction over servitude. So be it. All ships attack formation. Destroy their pathetic fleet. The battle begins. The Caltharian armada moved forward like a dark tide, their weapons charging with ominous energy. 10,000 ships in perfect formation, a sight that had broken the spirit of countless civilizations. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't retreat or form defensive positions. Instead, they scattered in what appeared to be complete chaos, each vessel moving on seemingly random vectors. To Caltharian sensors, it looked like panic. Admiral Vextar smiled as his forward elements prepared to destroy the fleeing humans. But Maya Chen wasn't fleeing. Through the quantum network, she was orchestrating something that had never been attempted in galactic warfare. 200 human minds, linked through consciousness interfaces, began to think as one entity while retaining individual creativity and intuition. Fire, Maya whispered, and chaos erupted. The human ships had been moving in apparent randomness, but every movement had been calculated. As the Caltharian fleet closed in, they found themselves in a perfectly designed kill zone. Human weapons, seemingly primitive by galactic standards, struck with surgical precision. But it wasn't just the accuracy that shocked the aliens. It was the coordination. Every human ship fired in perfect synchronization, creating destructive interference patterns that amplified their weapons' effects exponentially. Caltharian shields designed to handle direct assaults couldn't adapt to the complex energy signatures created by coordinated quantum interference. The first wave of alien attackers simply disintegrated. Impossible, Vextar roared as his sensors registered the destruction of 300 ships in the first exchange. How are they doing this? Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. Commander Zixala's 6 arms trembled as she processed the tactical data. Admiral, they're not just coordinating their attacks. They're somehow thinking together while acting independently. Our battle computers can't predict their movements because they're not following any logical pattern, Maya felt the quantum network pulse with shared satisfaction as the first phase of the battle concluded. Through her enhanced consciousness, she could feel the determination of every human crew member. Their fierce love for home and family transformed into tactical brilliance. Phase 2, she announced across the network. Let's show them what human creativity looks like when we're angry. The Caltharian Confusion Admiral Vextar had commanded fleets for over a century, participating in the conquest of dozens of worlds. He had faced desperate last stands, suicidal charges, and clever tactical maneuvers, but he had never encountered anything like the humans' fighting style. The remaining human ships moved through his formation like predators, appearing where they shouldn't be able to survive, striking with impossible precision, then vanishing before counterattacks could be coordinated. They fought with a combination of mathematical precision and wild creativity that defied every principle of military science. Sir, we've lost over 1,000 ships, Zixala reported, her voice shaking. The humans are using some kind of distributed intelligence system. They're fighting as individuals and as a collective simultaneously. Our tactical computers can't process it. Vextar watched in growing horror as another group of his vessels exploded under concentrated human fire. The humans were outnumbered 50-1, but they were fighting like they held the advantage. Their ships danced through space with inhuman precision, while their weapons created destruction patterns that shouldn't have been possible with their technology. How many humans are we facing? He demanded. Still 200 ships, Admiral, but they're fighting as if each ship has the knowledge and reflexes of all 200 crews combined. It's like fighting a single entity with 200 bodies. Through the quantum network, Maya could feel her fellow captain's thoughts flowing like a river of tactical information. Captain Rodriguez was analyzing enemy shield frequencies, while Commander Kim identified weak points in the Caltharian formation. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Park was calculating optimal firing solutions, while Captain David Chen tracked enemy communication patterns. But what made them truly dangerous wasn't just their shared intelligence. It was their human nature. Each captain brought their own personality, their own creative spark to the collective consciousness. They fought with the precision of machines and the unpredictability of artists. The impossible victory. As the battle raged, word of the conflict began spreading across the galaxy through the Caltharian Empire's own communication networks. On a dozen conquered worlds, subjugated species watched in amazement as sensor readings told an impossible story. The mighty Caltharian fleet, which had seemed invincible for a century, was being systematically destroyed by a tiny human force. On the prison world of Kepler Prime, Xanthan refugees gathered around hidden communication devices, listening to the battle reports with growing hope. On the mining colonies of Vega Station, enslaved Altarians began to whisper about the impossible courage of the humans. Maya felt these hopes through the quantum network. Carried by intercepted alien communications, the entire galaxy was watching, waiting to see if the impossible could happen, if a species could defeat overwhelming odds through will and ingenuity alone. "Admiral, we've lost over 4,000 ships." Commander Zixala's voice was barely a whisper. "The humans have lost only 37 vessels. At this rate, they'll destroy our entire fleet." Vextar stared at the tactical display in shock. 50-1 odds should have guaranteed victory. The mathematics of warfare had never failed before. But the humans weren't fighting with mathematics. They were fighting with something the Caltharian Empire had forgotten about long ago. They were fighting with passion, creativity, and an absolutely refusal to surrender. "All ships fall back to maximum range," Vextar ordered. "Prepare for long-range bombardment. We'll destroy their planet from a distance." But Maya had anticipated this move. Through the quantum network, she had been monitoring Caltharian communications and analyzing their battle doctrine. As the alien fleet pulled back, human ships moved to intercept their retreat routes. "This is Captain Chen to Admiral Vextar," Maya broadcast on all frequencies. "You came here to conquer us. The only thing you're going to conquer is your own fear. We're not done yet." The quantum network pulsed with shared determination as Maya prepared to execute humanity's final gambit. Phase 3 was about to begin, and it would either secure humanity's freedom or ensure that both fleets were destroyed in the attempt. Gods of War, Unleashed. The Quantum Consciousness. Unleashed. The battle had raged for 6 hours, and the impossible was happening. The Caltharian Empire's most powerful fleet was being decimated by a force they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Vextar watched his tactical displays with growing dread, as another squadron of his dreadnoughts disappeared under coordinated human fire. "Admiral, they're doing something new," Commander Zixala reported, her voice tight with fear. "The humans are changing their attack patterns. The quantum signatures from their ships are intensifying." On the human flagship Indomitable Spirit, Captain Maya Chen felt the consciousness network reaching critical resonance. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice crackled through the quantum link from Earth. "Maya, the collective is stabilizing at maximum efficiency. You now have access to the full tactical consciousness of 200 crews. You're no longer just thinking together. You're thinking beyond human limitations." Maya closed her eyes and felt her consciousness expand beyond anything she had ever imagined. She could perceive the battle from 200 perspectives simultaneously, process tactical data faster than any computer, and most importantly, she could feel the creative spark of every human mind in the network. Captain Rodriguez was seeing patterns in the enemy formation that revealed hidden weaknesses. Commander Kim was identifying the optimal targeting sequences that would create cascading failures in the Caltharian defensive grid. Lieutenant Colonel Park was calculating movement patterns that would allow human ships to occupy impossible positions in space. But it was more than tactical data. Maya could feel the determination of Ensign Sarah Walsh, who had lost her parents in a Caltharian raid on a colonial outpost. She could sense the protective fury of Commander David Chen, thinking about his daughter safe on Earth. She felt the cold calculation of Captain Maria Santos, a former intelligence officer who understood that this battle would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. All ships, this is Chen. Phase 3 is now active. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that freedom is possible. Let's remind them what gods of war look like when they're truly angry. The Berserker Protocol. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The human ships, already fighting with impossible coordination, suddenly began moving with a ferocity that defied physics and logic. They accelerated beyond their maximum rated speeds, executed maneuvers that should have killed their crews, and fired weapons with an accuracy that approached divine precision. The Berserker Protocol had been theoretical until this moment. By pushing human consciousness through the quantum network beyond normal limits, it temporarily allowed crews to ignore physical constraints through pure force of will. Heart rates spiked to impossible levels, adrenaline flooded through human bodies, and collective determination transformed into something approaching divine wrath. Admiral Vextar watched in horror as human ships began moving through his formation like vengeful spirits. They appeared where sensors said they couldn't exist, survived hits that should have vaporized them, and coordinated attacks with a precision that made his most advanced battle computers look primitive. "Sir, the human ships are operating beyond their design specifications," his science officer reported. "Their crews should be dead from the acceleration forces they're experiencing. Their weapons should have overheated and failed hours ago, yet they continue fighting with increasing effectiveness." Through the quantum network, Maya could feel her fellow humans pushing beyond the boundaries of normal human endurance. Pain became irrelevant when shared among 200 minds. Fear transformed into fury when amplified by collective consciousness. Individual limitations disappeared when supported by the will of an entire species. Lieutenant Commander James Park, piloting the destroyer Defiant Victory, pushed his ship through a maneuver that should have torn it apart. G-forces that would have liquefied his organs were somehow distributed through the quantum network, allowing him to maintain consciousness and precision. His weapons found their targets with supernatural accuracy, disabling 3 Caltharian heavy cruisers in a sequence of shots that lasted less than 10 seconds. Captain Sarah Kim, commanding the cruiser Relentless Hope, found herself surrounded by 20 enemy vessels. Instead of retreating, she accelerated directly into the center of the formation, while spinning her ship in a complex pattern that made targeting impossible. Her weapons fired in all directions simultaneously, each shot calculated by the collective consciousness to strike critical system nodes. When the engagement ended 30 seconds later, 19 of the 20 enemy ships were either destroyed or disabled. The psychological warfare. As the battle continued to turn against them, the Caltharian Empire faced something they had never encountered in their century of conquest: doubt. The mathematical certainty of overwhelming force had been their foundation for generations. Now, watching their most powerful fleet being systematically destroyed by a tiny human force, cracks began appearing in their absolute confidence. Maya sensed the growing fear and uncertainty among the enemy fleet through intercepted communications. Through the quantum network, she shared this intelligence with her fellow captains, and together they began to orchestrate something beyond mere military tactics. They began to wage psychological warfare on a galactic scale. "Open channels to all Caltharian vessels," Maya ordered. Her voice, when it came through their communication systems, carried the weight of 200 human minds speaking in unison. "Attention, warriors of the Caltharian Empire. You came here expecting easy conquest. You found gods of war instead. Look around you. Your mighty fleet burns while we remain. Your mathematics mean nothing when faced with human determination. Your empire's reputation for invincibility dies today among the wreckage of your ambitions." Admiral Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: genuine fear. The human captain's words carried a truth that couldn't be denied. His fleet, which had conquered 50 star systems without a single defeat, was being humiliated by creatures he had dismissed as primitive. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from several of our squadron commanders," Commander Zixala reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Morale is collapsing across the fleet. Some vessels are requesting permission to withdraw." The psychological impact spread beyond the immediate battle. On conquered worlds throughout the Caltharian Empire, subjugated species were monitoring the battle through hidden communication networks. The impossible was happening before their eyes. The invincible empire was being defeated by a species that refused to surrender. On the mining world of Rigel 7, Centaurian slaves began sabotaging production facilities. On the agricultural planet of Vegan Prime, Altarian workers started organized resistance for the first time in 50 years. Across the Empire, the myth of Caltharian invincibility was crumbling, as species after species watched humans fight like gods against impossible odds. The final gambit with over 7,000 ships destroyed and his remaining forces in complete disarray, Admiral Vextar faced the unthinkable reality of total defeat. His empire had never lost a major engagement, had never even conceived that defeat was possible. The mathematics that had guided Caltharian military doctrine for centuries had become meaningless against human ingenuity and determination. "Admiral, we have to withdraw," Commander Zixala pleaded. "We've lost 3/4 of our fleet. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we didn't know existed. We need to regroup and develop countermeasures." But Vextar's pride as a Caltharian commander wouldn't allow him to accept defeat by a primitive species. If he couldn't conquer Earth through conventional tactics, he would destroy it completely. "Prepare the planet killer missiles. If we can't have this world, neither can they." Maya sensed the change in enemy tactics through the quantum network's monitoring of Caltharian communications. The Admiral was preparing to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. Through the collective consciousness, she shared this intelligence with every human ship and felt their shared determination crystallize into something approaching divine wrath. "All ships, the enemy is preparing planet-killer weapons," Maya announced. "They would rather destroy our home than admit defeat." "This ends now." "Execute Final Protocol. For Earth, for humanity, for every species in the galaxy that dreams of freedom." What followed was the most audacious military maneuver in galactic history. All remaining human ships, now numbering 163 after the brutal battle, suddenly accelerated directly toward the Caltharian flagship. They moved in perfect formation, their quantum network synchronized to create a single, overwhelming attack that would either break the enemy fleet completely or result in mutual annihilation. The Berserker Protocol pushed beyond all previous limits as human crews accepted that survival was less important than victory. Heart rates spiked beyond sustainable levels. G-forces approached the theoretical limits of human endurance. But the quantum consciousness network distributed the physical stress among all participants, while amplifying their collective determination. The moment of truth, Admiral. Vextar watched in disbelief as the remaining human ships approached his position with suicidal determination. Their formation was perfect, their coordination absolute, and their weapons charged to maximum capacity. In that moment, he finally understood what his empire had awakened. These weren't just humans fighting for survival. These were beings who had transcended normal limitations through sheer force of will and love for their home. They fought with the fury of gods because they were defending everything they held sacred. "All weapons fire," Vextar roared, knowing it was probably too late. The final exchange lasted less than 30 seconds but would be remembered across the galaxy for millennia. Human ships moving with inhuman precision delivered a concentrated barrage that overloaded every defensive system the Caltharians possessed. The quantum network allowed them to coordinate their fire with mathematical perfection, while their human creativity found weaknesses that no computer could have calculated. The Caltharian flagship, Domination's Edge, which had led the conquest of 50 star systems, cracked along its entire length as human weapons found the precise frequency needed to destabilize its quantum armor. Secondary explosions rippled through the massive vessel as critical systems failed in cascading sequence. Admiral Vextar, his compound eyes reflecting the fires consuming his bridge, managed one final transmission before his flagship's communication array failed. "Impossible. We had the numbers. We had the advantage. How did we lose?" Maya's reply came through the quantum network, carrying the voice of humanity itself. "You didn't lose to superior numbers or better technology. You lost because you never understood what you were fighting. We're not just defending a planet. We're defending the idea that freedom is worth any sacrifice. That's something your empire forgot how to understand." The new galactic order, when the battle ended 6 hours later, the impossible had become reality. The mighty Caltharian fleet, which had begun the day with 10,000 ships and absolute confidence in victory, now consisted of fewer than 800 damaged vessels desperately transmitting surrender signals. Humanity, with fewer than 200 ships and no right to victory by any conventional measure, had achieved the impossible. But more than that, they had transformed the balance of power in the galaxy. The myth of Caltharian invincibility was shattered forever. On conquered worlds throughout the Empire, revolution erupted as subjugated species found the courage to fight for their freedom. The battle reports spread faster than light through quantum communication networks, carrying a message that resonated across the galaxy. Even the mightiest empire could be defeated by those who refused to surrender. Captain Maya Chen, her consciousness still linked to her fellow humans through the quantum network, felt the weight of galactic history settling around them. They had fought like gods and won against impossible odds, but with that victory came responsibility. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice crackled through from Earth as the Berserker Protocol slowly powered down.
Maya, you did it.
All of you. The impossible victory. But I'm reading quantum signatures from across the galaxy. Other species are requesting alliance with humanity. The Centaurians, the Altarians, even some Rigelian colonies. You've started something that can't be stopped. Maya looked out at the stars, no longer seeing empty space but a galaxy full of species yearning for freedom. Humanity had fought like gods and won. Now they would have to learn to lead like gods as well. The age of Caltharian dominance was over. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun. And throughout the galaxy, in a dozen different languages, the same phrase was being whispered with new hope. They fought like gods. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. When you threaten everything humans love, when you push them beyond the breaking point, when you make them choose between surrender and extinction, you don't face an army. You face gods of war who will rewrite the laws of physics through pure determination. The Caltharian Empire would spend the next decade negotiating the terms of their surrender and the liberation of conquered worlds. Other galactic powers would approach Earth with respect rather than condescension. And human children would grow up in a universe where their species was known not for their numbers or their technology, but for their absolute refusal to bow before impossible odds. The Terran Gambit had succeeded beyond all expectations. Humanity had not just survived its first major galactic conflict. They had established themselves as the new guardians of freedom in a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to fight for something greater than mere survival. In the end, numbers didn't matter. Technology didn't matter. What mattered was the human spirit, amplified by quantum consciousness and driven by love for home and family. When pushed to their absolute limits, humans didn't break. They transcended those limits and became something their enemies couldn't understand or defeat. They became gods of war.